just have to feel great, obviously, with Darren Rizzi. Everything he's been through, this group, just trying to create some sort of spark. We came into the broadcast, and what we say, Joe, it wasn't about the wins and losses. Of course they wanted to win, but just bring a little energy, bring a little life back into this building. The big shots of the first half kind of fell asleep a little bit there offensively in the second, but the defense came up with the stops when they needed. 2 big sacks. Of course, the Tyrann Mathieu pick, and that's all they needed to pull it off.
Can't find anyone. Sets his feet, throwing end zone for Kittle. Oh, did he come down? He did! Touchdown!
Kittle, huge play in a huge moment. He does it when he catches the ball. He does it in the run game. Their connection is just awesome.
Welcome to the NFL on Fox podcast, presented by Verizon, the NFL powered by Verizon 5G. I am your host, Dave Helman. And this is my pledge to you, dear listener. Much like Jake Moody, no matter what came before, no matter the ups or downs, I am here to deliver when it matters most. Jake Moody booting the game winner for the 49ers, who you just listened to at the top of the show. And man, did that turn into a theme in a wacky week 10, a kicker-heavy week in the NFL. I think that would be understating it. We will get to Moody's heroics here in a minute. The day ended with some kicker heroics down in Houston. We will talk about a wild Sunday night football game. The Pittsburgh Steelers made a big statement on Sunday. Oh, and did I mention the Kansas City Chiefs invented a new way to stay undefeated? So much to get to, so little time. So let's jump right into it with our Sunday 6 each week here on the NFL on Fox podcast recap show. We cultivate. We scan the news and the box scores and the topics, and we rack our brains to come up with the 6 storylines we think you need to know about coming out of the NFL Sunday. We're going to jump into it right now. Let's go. Let's kick off the Sunday 6 with a nail biter down in Tampa Bay. Early window right here on Fox. Tom Brady and Kevin Burkhardt were on the call as the 49ers slip past the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 23-20, not the prettiest, not the crispest game for San Francisco coming out of the bye week. Maybe the heat and humidity down in Florida had something to do with that. They got to be happy that they were the ones rallying in the fourth quarter for a change. Remember, they've lost a couple that they led in the fourth quarter. This one closer than it probably needed to be, but they get the walk-off field goal as time expires. Jake Moody, go figure. Ugly, ugly day for him in his return from injury. 3 of 6 on the day, 3 missed field goals. Struggles were bad enough that it caused a kicker fracas. Deebo Samuel was arguing and yapping at Jake Moody and long snapper Tabor Pepper. That's how bad this was, that even kind of took a little bit of a swipe at Pepper there. You see, if you're watching, frustrations boiling over as the Niners missed their 3rd field goal late in the fourth quarter. But of course, as this often works, redemption for Moody. He does hit the walk-off from 44 as time expires. Niners up to 5-4. Like I said, gotta feel good at least that you managed to overcome all of that, because we have seen mistakes catch up to the 49ers in the fourth quarter this season. The big storyline, Christian McCaffrey returns from injury, his first game of the year. 19 touches for 107 yards. Kind of incredible. It felt like a quiet day, a down day for McCaffrey, which totally to be expected when you haven't had a game all season long. You're coming off of Achilles tendonitis. If 19 touches for 107 yards is your down day, I think it speaks to how incredible San Francisco's offense and how incredible Christian McCaffrey are. I think that's the obvious storyline. The sneaky big thing here for me is that this was the most we've seen the 49ers passing game look like itself in quite some time. And what I mean by that is yak. It has been missing from San Francisco's offense for a lot of this season. They had 182 yards after the catch in this game. The big one would be the rookie Ricky Pearsall, 46-yard catch and run for his first career touchdown. Let's talk about that for a minute. Dude got shot in the chest, 2.5 months ago, and is making fantastic run after catch plays in the NFL later on that year. We talked about it when he came off of IR. I wouldn't have been surprised if Ricky Pearsall missed the season dealing with not just the injury, but the trauma of getting shot in a robbery. And here he is going to the house from 46 yards out. Feels like a missing element in San Francisco's offense when you can get these guys the ball in space and let them do a lot of the work for you. Of course, wasn't all them. One of the best plays of the entire day, Brock Purdy's gorgeous throw to George Kittle in the end zone. Some fantastic toe tap work by Kittle for a big touchdown. And at the end of it all, Brock Purdy, one of his best days of the season, 353 yards for Brock, not to mention 2 touchdowns. Was not at all surprised to see he was Tom Brady's LFG Player of the Week.
Every game that I broadcast, I award the LFG Player of the Game to that one player who makes me say, let's go.
And today's LFG Player of the Game is the quarterback of the winning team in the Niners, Brock Purdy. Man, what a game you played. It was such a quiet 330-plus yards, however many you threw to it. The stats are right behind me, but you played so great. One of the plays I loved was you felt the free rusher on the throw to Christian where you dropped the dime over the top. You had Olsen running on you free. How do you trust Christian in that moment on that downfield throw to come up with that catch?
Yeah, man. I mean, those are, reps and routes that we've run the last couple of years with him, one-on-one with the linebacker. And we had a free guy, come through. But Christian and I, man, he hadn't been playing, obviously, the first half of the season. But that's a route that we've, sunk back to the last couple of years. And I was like, he's supposed to be right here. And sure enough, he stuttered the guy, and it was right over the top, and he was where he was supposed to be. So that's just a timing thing we've had, the last couple of years. I'm glad to have him back.
Yeah, such a great job by you just drifting away slightly and then putting enough air on it where he could get his head around and judge that. How does the offense feel differently when you have Christian back, you have Debo back? Tell me about that feeling for you today, knowing that you have 2 of your best playmakers out there on the field with you.
Yeah, it's huge, man. I mean, especially when it comes down to matchups and you get man-to-man coverage, you got guys that can obviously win and create separation and open up other guys. When guys doubling Christian, you got Debo one-on-one, George one-on-one. And so those are things that are nice. And then just being able to drop back and have my guys around me that I've had the last couple of years, it feels good when you get them back. So.
Yeah, and then obviously sitting on the sideline and you see your kicker Moody miss 3 field goals. And now you got the ball and you're going into a 2-minute drive. You don't have a ton of time. What's the confidence level for you that you got to get the ball down there pretty close in range to give him a chance?
Yeah, man, I mean, that's the NFL, and you know it. I mean, if you have a rough first half or something doesn't go your way, it's all about finishing, man, especially in the NFL. We're going to have our chances and opportunities, and all of us, man, we got his back and trusting him. We've seen things that he's done for us over the last couple of years, and so all we were thinking was, hey, let's get Moody into his range and trust him. So that's how it went, and he sunk it.
Yeah, well, it's a great performance by you and the entire team going on the road. I know it was hot down there, but congratulations to you. Enjoy the flight home, coming off the bye. I know everyone's going to be pretty tired from the heat down here, but you played a great game, man. It was fun to watch.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Go Niners.
I don't think you can underestimate how big this was for San Francisco to avoid blowing this game. Because they had the potential to go behind to Tampa in the last minute of this game. They forced a game-tying field goal. Could have gotten away from them in overtime. Does not. And it matters to get above 500 considering what is ahead of San Francisco. Return division game against Seattle next week, at Green Bay after that, at Buffalo, and then Chicago. The next 4 are all against teams that are firmly in the playoff hunt. You needed this one against an injury-riddled Buccaneers team. Doesn't matter how nervous it was. They got it. Debo Samuel, Tabor Pepper, Jake Moody, they all said everything's good after the game. It's amazing how winning helps that. San Francisco with the win, above 500, and we're on to the next one. Up next on the Sunday 6, we're inching toward the holidays. Might as well take this opportunity on the recap show to wish you a Merry Rizmas. Everything feeling very festive in New Orleans as the Saints, in their first game under interim head coach Darren Rizzi, upset the Atlanta Falcons 20-17. Man, what a wait it's been. Saints' last win prior to Sunday against Atlanta came on September 15th. And you could tell if you looked at the reactions, if you saw Tyrann Mathieu in the post-game interview with Pam Oliver after getting a big interception in this game. Saints had some pep in their step. And this is a team that lost 7 straight games, fired Dennis Allen the week before after a brutal loss to Carolina. And even if you lose this game, you wanted to see some energy. You wanted to see some moxie from the New Orleans Saints. Suffice to say, you got it across the board, and you get the win under Darren Rizzi. Had a chance to catch up with Greg Olsen and Joe Davis about this new energy for the Rizzi Saints. Well, guys, not only does Darren Rizzi end a 7-game losing streak in his debut, but the Saints take down their biggest rival. I imagine that looked like a very cathartic win for this Saints team.
Yeah, no matter who it came against, I think it was going to feel good, but they do it against a rival and a hot team. This is a big upset today.
It is, and you just have to feel great, obviously, with Darren Rizzi. Everything he's been through, this group, just trying to create some sort of spark. We came into the broadcast, and what we say, Joe, it wasn't about the wins and losses. Of course they wanted to win, but just bring a little energy, bring a little life back into this building. The big shots of the first half kind of fell asleep a little bit there offensively in the second, but the defense came up with the stops when they needed. 2 big sacks, of course, the Tyrann Mathieu pick, and that's all they needed to pull it off.
I got to say, it doesn't feel like a coincidence that the special teams coordinator takes over and you win a game due in large part to some sneaky wins in the special teams game as well.
Yeah, there's like some weird magic going on there, right? Special teams influence, and then 3 things on special teams go your way.
Yeah, I mean, Younghoe Koo, he misses 2, has a third one right before the half deflected. 1 straight miss, 1 deflected, and 1 hits the upright. So, hey, listen, when you're struggling to get a win in the NFL, you're making your head coaching debut, you will take a win and you will not apologize. It doesn't matter how it comes.
Always entertaining when the Saints and Falcons play. Guys, I appreciate it. Thanks as always.
Good, Dave. Thanks, Dave.
Toilet humor and a dad joke, not to mention just brutal, awesome self-awareness and honesty in your first post-game press conference as a head coach. Yeah, Darren Rizzi took no time at all to win me over. Special teams coordinator with a big win, and we touched on it, but ironically, special teams gaffes by the Falcons played a big role in this one. Guess what? Theme for the Niner game, theme for this game. We're going to talk about it some more later on in the Sunday Six. Special teams loomed really large in Week 10. Younghoe Koo for Atlanta looking like a little bit of a scapegoat, which is ironic when you think back to the first time these teams played. All the way in Week 4, Younghoe Koo kicks a 58-yard game winner to beat the Saints. 6 weeks later, he goes 1 of 4 on the afternoon. He misses from 53 and 46. And as Greg pointed out, the Saints block one from 35 just before halftime. That special teams coordinator edge coming in clutch for the Saints. Now, you can point out when you kick a lot of field goals, it's because the offense isn't executing as well as it could be, but still, a game you lose by 3 points, your kicker misses 3 field goals. Falcons still sitting just fine in the NFC South standings. They're still 2 games ahead of Tampa Bay, who they have swept, by the way. But this was a chance to get to 5-0 in the division, and you let it slip when you very easily could have had 9 more points in this game. I guess you could say it was the Falcons who had the crappy day. We've talked about special teams a lot already. Let's keep the theme rolling. The third item on our Sunday Six is that the kicking game played a huge role in Week 10. We already mentioned it. San Francisco struggled to kick. It did not ultimately cost them against Tampa. The Falcons struggled to kick. It very much cost them against the Saints. And that was just 2 of the games where kicking played a huge role. Let's start in the obvious place. Let's take it to Kansas City, where the Chiefs just keep inventing ways to stay undefeated. It looked for all the world like this was finally going to be their first blemish. They struggled to get to 300 yards. They could not run the ball, not looking as explosive on offense as they did on Monday night against Tampa. And Bo Nix played so phenomenally against Steve Spagnuolo. It looked like he was going to be the star of recap shows like this. I mean, if Denver finds a way to win this game, every show is leading off with this sensational rookie story. You see the stat line, 22 of 30 for 215, went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, but you know how this story goes. Denver lines up for a chip shot, 35-yarder. Will Lutz been a good kicker in this league for a long time, going back to New Orleans. Easy, right? It's got to be Denver pulling off the upset, knocking the Chiefs from the unbeaten status. You know how it ends. Leo Chanel is officially credited with the block, but man, it felt like half the Chiefs block team made it through the line. I love it, man. Look, Patrick Mahomes celebrating this like a Super Bowl, and that is a guy that has won 3 of them. Lot of wins. I mean, it shows how much teams put into this stuff, that a regular season win for an 8-0 team still means that much. Love the fire and the never say die attitude from the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm honestly shocked. I mean, first 9-0 start for Kansas City since 2013. I guess I would have remembered if they started that well in the Mahomes era, but I'm a little bit surprised that as hard as everything has come for the Chiefs, this is their best start in the Mahomes era. They have gone 8-1 twice with him as the starter, so we're not that far off, but go figure that a Chiefs team that has had to fight harder than most of the others every single week is the one that's 9-0. Guaranteed a winning record on November 10th. That's, not a bad spot to be. They lead the AFC West comfortably, although I don't know how many people had both the Chargers and the Broncos still being this squarely in the mix this far into the season. I will be honest, it wasn't me. So kudos to those teams, but this does look like it's going to be Kansas City's division once again. Big surprise, I know. That was not the only other big field goal kicking story, though, because down in Jacksonville, Minnesota's kicker literally had to do everything himself, and he wasn't even on the team last week. John Parker Romo. I'll be honest, we got a lot of stuff going on in studio on a Sunday. We're recording booth hits. We're putting things together during the early window. We're trying to keep track of 8 games at once. They cut to John Parker Romo after Minnesota's 12-7 win against Jacksonville, and it took me 30 seconds to recognize him because he literally just got to the team. Replaced Will Reichard, who was injured last week, and he becomes the first player in NFL history to kick 4 field goals and score all of his team's points in his NFL debut. This is his first game. The Vikings called on him to score all of their points. An ugly, ugly win. Vikings had no problem moving the ball, in all honesty. 400 yards of offense. They went 0-5 in the red zone, and bad Sam Darnold reared his ugly head. 3 interceptions, including 2 of them in the end zone. But you know what? If you got to win your clunkers, folks. You're going to play some ugly ones from time to time. The Vikings get the W in unimpressive fashion. And you can think a little bit of that. John Parker Romo, what a debut. But also, the Vikings weren't the only ones that were in a giving mood, as I talked about with our guys on the call, Adam Amin and Mark Sanchez. Well, guys, I've seen a lot of games where the last team to get the football is going to win. This felt like the first time I've ever seen a game where the last team to get a takeaway is going to win. Just 6 of them on the day. That really felt like the theme in this one.
Definitely, and especially for a team like Jacksonville, Ryan Nielsen's defense was not getting many takeaways. They finally found a game where their defense kept them in it. But then what does Minnesota do? One of the best takeaway teams in the NFL. They keep their Vikings in this game to get a win.
And one of the toughest things for Minnesota all day was their red zone production. I mean, it was non-existent. Over 400 yards of offense. They moved the ball between the 20s, and then they get down to the red zone and completely shut down. Multiple turnovers, pre-snap penalties, knocking themselves out of field goal range with a sack late in the game. A lot of stuff to clean up if you're Minnesota. A moral victory, but at this point for Jacksonville and this defense, I mean, another one-score game where you end up on the wrong side of the scoreboard.
I'll say this, Dave, and I think this is something that you might have been alluding to. The Vikings, to try to prove that they're one of the teams to beat in the NFL, has to win games in different fashions, right? We've seen a lot of their offense. We've seen them get takeaways. This is one of those wins that you have to eke out. You can't lose to a 2-7 team if you want to maintain your spot in the NFC North race. I think this is one of those wins that Kevin O'Connell will have plenty to look at, but will happily take.
You happily take them any way you can get them, of course. But and it's always more fun to fix these problems after a win. But I got to imagine there's going to be some nervous conversation about Sam Darnold in Minneapolis this week after this game. I mean, is this more of an aberration, or how concerned should Vikings be after a 3-interception performance?
Yeah, it's back-to-back 3 turnover games now.
Yeah, exactly right. And so Sam's got to clean up some of that stuff. Some of it's his footwork, some of it's his eyes, but most importantly, not putting the ball in harm's way. He's got to tighten that up if they want to make a run this second half of the season. They've been explosive at times, but now is really where these teams all in the middle of the pack start to separate, and a big determining factor in that is taking care of the football, eliminating turnovers.
It's definitely going to be the talking point for Vikings fans. But like I said, way better to do that after a win. Adam, Mark, love talking to y'all. Soon.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
Fourth item on our Sunday 6 is Victory Unlocked, and it's brought to you by Zillow. Agents, tours, loans, homes. And you know, the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Washington Commanders on Sunday afternoon, 28-27. One of the best games of the early window. They might have unlocked this victory on Tuesday, though, because that was the NFL trade deadline when they added 2 players that helped secure this win. It's very rare to see a trade pay off so quickly. You know, guys get traded in the middle of the week. You barely know your playbook. You don't know anybody on the team. It's understandable if it takes a few weeks to get acclimated and start contributing to your new team. Not the case Sunday at FedEx Field. Steelers traded for receiver Mike Williams from the Jets on Tuesday, as well as pass rusher Preston Smith from the Packers. On Sunday, Mike Williams only caught 1 pass. Najee Harris joked afterward that he didn't even think he knew the playbook. That 1 pass is a 32-yard go ball with 2.5 minutes to play for the game-winning touchdown. That's what he does. You brought him in to be an outside-the-numbers deep threat for Russell Wilson, and ooh boy, did that pay off right away. Preston Smith, 3 tackles and a sack in the third quarter, and that sack helped stall the Commanders out and force them to kick a field goal, which put them up 27-21. So both players that the Steelers acquired at the trade deadline played integral roles in getting them over the finish line, and it's why the Steelers are 7-2 with one of their most impressive wins of the season. It's why you make those kind of moves. You gotta love it when a plan comes together if you're Mike Tomlin. Speaking of a plan coming together, Mike Tomlin with some 4D chess at the end of this game, even with the Mike Williams touchdown, even having stopped Jayden Daniels and Zach Ertz on a 4th down in the final minutes, Pittsburgh still might have had to give this ball back with a minute left, except they drew Washington offsides. It's the oldest play in the book. Johnny Newton, the rookie defensive tackle out of Illinois, friend of the show, he jumped on the hard count, and the Steelers can kneel it out instead of having to punt. I love Mike Tomlin so much. He tried to get all braggadocious with it and say, I guess we'll never know if we would have gone for it or punted, except his own center, Zach Frazier, kind of gave it away and said, yeah, we didn't have a play called. We were either going to draw him offside or we were going to punt. But you know what? Thanks to Johnny Newton, Mike Tomlin can talk all the trash he wants. The Steelers get a big road win. We talked about this in the preview episode. This means a lot to me. This just looks like a massively different Pittsburgh team than what we've seen. And I went back and looked it up to make sure. Last year, they were 0-7 when they fell down by 10 or more points in the second half. And that is what it looked like we were headed for in the second half of this game. Washington came out of halftime. They got the ball. They had already scored at the end of the first half. They zip right down the field, 24-14 lead. Terry McLaurin was dicing these dudes up all day. Recent history suggests Pittsburgh goes down 10 in the second half. We know what we should expect. I did not trust the Steelers to dig out of that hole. They could have folded, but they did not. From that point, they outscored Washington 14-3. And like I said, guys they acquired at the trade deadline were a big part of that. This feels like a Pittsburgh team with a higher ceiling than what we've gotten used to. Russell Wilson has a perfect passer rating in the fourth quarter of the 3 games that he's started. I like this team a lot. I was conditioned for a long time to think, yeah, the Steelers are good enough to win more games than they lose and not good enough that we should take them seriously. I'm taking this team seriously after finding a way to get past Washington. just in time for an even bigger test. They finally open division play next week. Steelers are one of 2 teams that have not played a division game yet. Big home game against Baltimore for a chance to really announce themselves, not announce themselves as a team worth taking seriously, announce themselves as a contender. Pittsburgh, Baltimore, already a game worth getting excited about a week ahead of time. And the Steelers getting this big win in Washington makes it even juicier than it already was. The 5th item in our Sunday 6, we're going to talk a little Sunday night football. We figured Lions-Texans down in Houston would be one of the best games of the weekend. Didn't also think it would be one of the weirdest, but it checked every box. 7 combined turnovers on Sunday night football. And at the end of a wild game, the Lions win 26-23. Get this, dating back to 1991, quarterbacks to throw 5 interceptions in a game. They were 2-44. Jared Goff is now the 3rd to get a win. 3-44 since 1991. Goff throws 5 interceptions. The Lions look dead in the water. Wouldn't you know it, they rally to get a walk-off win. Jake Bates with 2 hilariously close field goals. I'm pretty sure he kissed both uprights with the football, but they are both good. And the Lions escaped from Houston at 8-1, one of the most entertaining games of the day. And we're going to talk about it in a little more depth with our guy, Ben Arthur, who's gracious enough to hop on with us late here. Ben, I'm just going to say it, man. We're late enough in the season that this doesn't feel reckless. This is a team of destiny type of win for the Detroit Lions. Like, you weather the 5 interceptions, the goofy field goals, you get CJ Stroud to throw a couple picks of his own. It was an ugly win, but this is the type of win that only a very, very good football team can pull off, in my opinion.
Yeah, the Lions absolutely showed their grit and resiliency, right? I mean, this is why they are one of the top Super Bowl contenders in the NFL this season. I mean, we've seen them blow out teams. We know how high powered they can be on offense, but in this game in particular, they had to win differently, right? And as you mentioned, the first half didn't look so good, looked pretty awful at times. And then the Jared Goff's 5 picks, as you mentioned, but the best teams in football, the best teams throughout history can figure out ways to win. And they absolutely did that today. One heck of a win for Detroit on the road, primetime Sunday night football, man. That was big time stuff.
I'm so impressed by the way that Dan Campbell just manages to pull the right levers for his team. I mean, whether it's the way that they played the end of this game. I mean, I was a little dubious about both of those field goals. I mean, one of them was from 58 yards. You think, man, there's still 5 minutes on the clock. Maybe you punt and try to play ball control. That field goal is good. Next one is not a whole lot easier for Jake Bates, 52. I also love, after the game, Dan Campbell's talking about how I'm not going to tell Jared Goff anything. Like, those were not ill-advised throws. Sometimes it's just not your night. We know he's always been gutsy with the 4th down calls, and the Lions did go for 2 at one point in this game to try to get back into it. But just the way he manages his team and seems to instill confidence in everybody, it's really, really impressive.
Yeah, it's quite incredible. And I think really telling of the point you're making, Dave, is coming out at halftime, right? Like he was doing the sideline interview and just we've seen the post-game interviews. The post-game locker room for the Lions after wins, just this incredible sense of belief and confidence in his team. But doing that sideline interview coming out of the break saying we're going to get a turnover, I see it coming. And then like literally 3 seconds after he was saying that on the NBC broadcast, who was it? Robertson got the pick when Stroud was targeting Dell on that little out route to start the third quarter. And so there's really something about the way the way his messages get across to this team and how the team seems to embody what he's saying, because it translates from the locker room, whatever meeting rooms, I'm sure, during the week, and seems to manifest itself when they play in these tough, critical games.
You get a win in a situation like this. I can't think of many environments where you're going to doubt when you can pull this one out of the fire. Jared Goff can overcome as rough of a start as he had. Probably salvages his MVP hopes. I was joking during the game. I was like, I don't know if you can recover from 5 interceptions in a game, because I assumed they were going to lose, because like I said at the top, like quarterbacks were what, 2-41 when they threw that many picks, or 2-44, even worse, excuse me. So for them to pull this out, like I said, there's not going to be a situation the rest of the year where the Lions should have any reason to doubt their resiliency and their ability to get back into a game.
Yeah, and against a team of this caliber, right? And the way the Texans defense was playing, I mean, they were playing lights out. They were getting a lot of pressures too. I don't know how many sacks they had off the top of my head. I'm not sure they even sacked Goff at all.
They didn't get a sack, Ben, which isn't, like, I'm with you. I was shocked with the amount of pressure they were getting on him.
Yeah, with Barnett and Autry and all those guys. And they didn't have Will Anderson Jr. or Mario Edwards, one of their better D tackles. So, I mean, this is as good of a defense as they'll play all year. So to be able to grind this one out definitely speaks a lot of the kind of the character of this offense and of their quarterback, Jared Goff.
Over on the flip side of this thing, even with CJ Stroud's 2 interceptions, the Texans have a +3 turnover differential. They're up 23-7 at one point in this game. This is going to linger, and this is already a team that's been struggling to get its offense clicking. We can get into that in a minute, but this is a healthy amount of adversity for a Houston team that I still feel pretty good about. But you know, you think back to, we've talked a lot about the way the Bears managed to lose that Hail Mary game to Washington and the way that it's affected them. I worry about a loss like this lingering beyond, you know, the Sunday, Monday 24-hour rule.
Yeah, and exactly right, Dave. I agree. And it's because of the way they've looked this season, right? Like a lot of like the execution issues, like just barely getting by teams that they should look more comfortable in. And then coming out of that really bad Jets game, the Thursday night game, losing to a team they shouldn't have lost to. And then to put a game like this, as bad as it could get, right? You pick off the opposing quarterback 5 times, your defense plays lights out, and then to have some of these other issues that you've had throughout the year and kind of it all, you know, come together in like your most important game to this point. It's certainly concerning. It's going to be interesting to see how they respond to this. But like I said, I mean, it's a lot of the same issues, and it's on the offense. Like the defense did, the defense did what it could, but like the execution stuff, 7 drives in the second half didn't have any points. I think just 2 of those drives had more than 10 net yards, and so then you add on top of that CJ Stroud's missed opportunity when he had that wide open Tank Dell. I think it was early in the third quarter, underthrew it, and that was picked off too. I mean, so yeah, I mean the continuation of these offensive issues, we see it continue to manifest itself, and when you go up against a team like the Lions, it's such a massive barometer, right, for where you are in terms of being a championship caliber team, and clearly the Texans are not that.
I don't think we'll see a more emblematic play of their offensive line struggles than Titus Howard stripping CJ Stroud on a scramble drill. I'm guessing, and we're recording this before all the post game is over, I'm guessing Titus Howard was trying to take the ball and run with it and try to pick up some yards in an otherwise hopeless situation, but it's a bad look considering how awful the Texans offensive line has struggled. They tried to shuffle it going into this game. They moved Juice Scruggs. They've experimented. Yeah. Is there any reason for hope that this can get better, or is this just the life the Texans are going to be living for the rest of the season?
Yeah, it's interesting because I want to say that there's hope for them because this is the Lions we're talking about. Not every team is the Lions, and so. And then I just think about like that first half, right, where everything looked like it was finally working, right? Like this super hyped offense, even though obviously no Stephon Diggs or Nico Collins. I mean, CJ Stroud looked comfortable in the pocket for the first time in forever it seemed like, just able to distribute the ball to different guys. And it looked like they figured it out, moving Drew Scruggs to left guard with Kenyon Green going on IR and Jarrett Patterson at center. I think there are some things to build off there, even though this second half collapse, this implosion, is all people are going to talk about tonight and into tomorrow. But I do think, despite that, I mean, particularly in that first half, I do think there are things you could build off of if you're the Texans. Those are the things you have to look at if you're Houston, I think.
Fortunately for Houston, they play in the AFC South, so they've got some cushion. But we said the same thing about Jacksonville last year, Ben, and we know how that finished. So I would advise the Texans to figure it out quickly and avoid a similar fate as the Jags did last year.
Yeah. This is the NFL, man. You cannot take anything for granted. So it's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out. And we have to remember too, like the Texans have two like pretty tough games in December too. They have the Ravens and the Chiefs back to back too. So yeah, there's a lot of season left. This one is going to hurt for a while. But yeah, they got to stay focused, man, because they can't. The Colts don't look like they know what they're doing right now. But you know, who knows? And so yeah, you can never. This is the NFL, man. So they gotta lock in for sure.
Indeed. Well, we will see how it goes. But man, what a goofy, fun team. Texans, if you're watching, you see the Texans still on top of their division, as are, we'll bring it back to the winners, the Detroit Lions, riding high, 8-1 in the NFC North. What a fun game. Ben, thanks for hopping on with me, man. A lot of fun. Talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Appreciate you. Thank you.
One more order of business on the Sunday Six, and we saved it for last on purpose because, honestly, it got a little lopsided on Sunday afternoon. That is our number 6 item here. There were 5 games on Sunday in Week 10 that were decided by multiple possessions, and 3 of those were blowouts so bad that one of the teams failed to even score a touchdown. We looked this up. There have been 19 games in the NFL this season where at least one team playing failed to score a touchdown of any kind. If you include, ironically, the Vikings win from earlier, 4 of those happened today. So 3 truly ugly beatdowns took place on Sunday in Week 10. I would argue the worst of them happened at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. The Dallas Cowboys get run off the field 34-6 by the Philadephia Eagles. Could have been a lot worse. And we went into this game knowing it was going to be bad. Dak Prescott injured his hamstring. Sounds like he's heading for season-ending surgery, or at least could be. He's certainly not going to be playing anytime soon. So with Cooper Rush going against the surging Eagles, you figured this could be rough. It was so much rougher than that, man. Dallas made a go of it, I guess, for about 20 minutes, largely off the strength of 2 Jalen Hurts turnovers. He'd been so good at protecting the football in the win streak heading up to this, but struggled early. End zone interception to Trayvon Diggs. He also fumbled in his own red zone, but that is the perfect encapsulation of what a mess the Dallas Cowboys are. Jalen Hurts fumbled on his own 6-yard line. The Cowboys took the ball there and gained 1 yard. 1 yard on 4 plays before kicking the field goal. 34-6 is your final. After Philly got the ball in the second half and scored a touchdown, this never felt close. Cooper Rush was bad. Trey Lance got a chance. He didn't fare much better. I believe the Cowboys' 2 quarterbacks combined for 49 passing yards when you include sacks. 66 total in a full 4-quarter game of NFL football. Ezekiel Elliott fumbled into the end zone on a play that could have put Dallas back into it. Just lopsided football. Philly ran for 187. Jalen Hurts, despite the turnovers, accounted for 4 total touchdowns. This felt like preseason football, honestly. And it's no surprise that the storylines coming out of this have very little to do with the actual game that took place, because it was decided on the first possession of the third quarter. It's mainly Micah Parsons talking about Mike McCarthy's long-term job security and what that might look like. It's Jerry Jones saying he doesn't plan to fire Mike McCarthy in the middle of the season, which might be true, but anytime the owner and general manager is answering that question after multiple games, it's bad for the vibes. Doesn't give you a good feeling about where this is going. Jerry Jones having his annual argument with Dallas media about the sun playing a role because the way AT&T Stadium is aligned. You get those beautiful sunlight shots during games. You also routinely see it affect the play on the field. CeeDee Lamb missed a wide open touchdown on that Dallas possession in the Eagles red zone because the sun was in his eyes. CeeDee Lamb says he'd 1,000% like to see curtains on the windows at AT&T Stadium. Jerry Jones doesn't seem to agree. It's a storyline that has repeated itself at least once a year, every year for, I would guess, the whole time AT&T Stadium has been open. Time is indeed a flat circle. Bad vibes in Dallas, and there's still half a season to go. That wasn't the only one, though. Honestly, the late window on Sunday had two of the most lopsided games you'll see in the NFL all year, because while Dallas was getting run out of the building, the New York Jets lost to the Cardinals 31-6, 65-12 in the two biggest games of the late window. Arizona jumped all over the Jets from the opening kickoff, and they did not look back. They doubled the Jets up in yardage. Kyler Murray only threw 2 incompletions on the day. Cardinals are on a 4-game win streak heading into their bye, sitting pretty on top of the NFC West, just like nobody predicted. Not even me, the Cardinals defender, saw Arizona at 6-4 heading into their bye week. Incredibly impressive stuff. Going to be an equally uncomfortable week in New York as it is in Dallas. Interim head coach Jeff Ulbrich said he didn't have his team ready to play. You could tell. They looked flat. They looked lifeless, which is strange because the Jets, got a great win against Houston last week. And also that was on Thursday Night Football. So you get the long weekend to rest and recharge and get back after it. This did not look like a team that had extra time off to prep and get healthy and rested and all that good stuff. This looked like a team that never saw any of that happen. Aaron Rodgers had no time to throw against an anemic, what you would call an anemic Arizona pass rush. But meanwhile, they've had back-to-back good weeks getting after the quarterback after what they did to Chicago. Really impressive stuff. Just nothing doing for the New York Jets. It's like none of that progress from last week even happened. Arizona, can't say enough about them. Trey Benson had his best day as a pro. Marvin Harrison continuing to come along, maybe a little bit of a slow start, but he looks A-okay to me. But man, these two combined for one of the more lifeless late windows of the NFL season. And then there was the last of the 3 blowouts. This one happened earlier in the day, so at least there was some craziness to offset it. But the Chicago Bears wiped out by the New England Patriots at Soldier Field. They fall 19-3 in a game that looked a lot more lopsided than even that score indicates. Kevin Kugler and Moose Johnston were on the call in Chicago. Take it away, guys.
Well, Daryl, a tough day if you're a Chicago Bears fan. The offense held in check, 9 New England Patriots sacks, and a 19-3 win for New England on the road at Soldier Field.
Yeah, they'd won the last 8 games here at Soldier Field, so everything was pointing in their direction, and we came on air, and you said this is a must-win situation for the Chicago Bears, not just because of the state of the franchise after 2 tough losses, coming after 3 good wins and a bye, but really what they have coming up over the second half of the season. Their schedule is the hardest in the NFL, all 6 of their division games, San Francisco and Seattle outside of the division. So let's come out here and take care of business against the 2-7 New England Patriots and try to get back on track. And they did nothing close to accomplishing that goal. It does not look good anywhere. You can sit here and watch Chicago play. Everything seems difficult. The defense, which should be ahead of the offense right now, allowed New England to be very opportunistic in how they played the game today. So there's going to be some really hard conversations and tough decisions in Chicago this week. There was already rumors of moving on from the play caller, Shane Waldron, moving on from head coach Matt Eberflus, and those are only going to grow starting immediately after this game.
Meanwhile, we talked about it at the top of the broadcast, year one post Bill Belichick and Gerard Mayo and his coaching staff now with a lot to build on. Wins in 2 of the last 3 games, that heartbreaking loss at Tennessee, the only blemish in that span, and a defense that really showed up today.
The defense was phenomenal. We gave them the player of the game. Just all of them together. You mentioned the sacks against Chicago. There's a little bit more patience and understanding of the situation that New England is in right now. But yet they still they find a way to do all the fundamentals. They are opportunistic. They play sound. They don't beat themselves, which is the number one thing that you have to learn as a new group starting all over. So New England is further ahead than I think people thought they would be at this point. And this is our first time getting to see them play live, but we've seen them on film, and it's exactly what you said. If there's some consistency there with some of the good things they're doing, they're going to be a tough out the rest of the season.
19-3, New England stuns Chicago in the Windy City.
These situations seem different on the surface. I mean, Chicago, nowhere near as much trouble as what you're seeing in a place like Dallas, where the quarterback could be headed to IR, the coach is in the last year of his contract, and the Bears are only 4-5. Theoretically, it's all out there in front of them. But this one feels every bit as bad as some of these other teams where it feels like the season's circling the drain just because of what is in front of the Bears, like Kevin and Moose alluded to. I mean, 7 of the Bears' last 8 games are against teams that have a winning record currently. And the one team that doesn't is Seattle, sitting at 4-5. So it's not even like that's another opportunity against a team like the Patriots who only have 2 wins. Every team they play the rest of the way has a fantastic record, has a really good quarterback, has a really strong defense. I mean, 2 games against Detroit, 2 games against Minnesota, 2 games against Green Bay. The division handles most of this. And you've got the 49ers and the Seahawks as well. It really did feel like they had to get this win. And not only did they lose, but goodness gracious, guys. I mean, 140 yards of offense in an NFL game against a bad football team. No offense to the Pats. Caleb Williams sacked 9 times. It defies explanation that a team with this much going for it on paper could look this hapless. Like, of course, it's not all going to be pretty when you have a rookie quarterback and a bunch of moving parts. And I know the offensive line is banged up, but this is the NFL, and typically good coaching and the right amount of talent can scheme around some of your deficiencies to put a watchable product on the field. And again, Dallas is missing Dak Prescott on top of a bunch of other guys. Like the key pieces of this, at least you would think, are here for the Bears. And it just makes you think how much worse this could get if the closest thing to a gimme left on your schedule is a beatdown where it's obvious early in the fourth quarter that you're not going to win this thing. And unfortunately, it does make me think about Matt Eberflus's long-term outlook in Chicago. I mean, he almost lost his job last year when the Bears went 7-10, but kind of rallied toward the end of the year. There was the debate about, do you just start over with a new regime for a new quarterback? I have no ill will for Matt Eberflus or anybody on the staff in Chicago. I don't like talking about people losing their jobs, but this is why you have that conversation. I mean, Caleb Williams is in the first 9 games of his career, rookie season, and now you're dealing with the pressure of, is there going to be a change in Chicago? Could Matt Eberflus lose his job, and what that entails and what that might look like for the rest of the year? And if he does, then you're starting over from square one with a new regime, a new scheme, a new voice in Caleb's ear. It's the same thing that happened to Mitchell Trubisky and Justin Fields, as plenty of people on social media were pointing out on Sunday. It just doesn't feel like a great environment for a rookie quarterback. And you look around at, as Kevin and Moose alluded to, a situation in New England where you do have a whole lot more patience with everything that's happening there because you did start the clock over on everyone at the same time. And obviously situations like what's happening in Denver and Washington speak for themselves, where everything is vastly overperforming on preseason expectations. But even if you knew this season was going to be kind of bumpy, there were ways you could have insulated your young quarterback against some of these struggles. And the Bears clearly didn't do it. And it looks anyway like it could be really bumpy in Chicago. And if the Bears manage to right the ship and keep that from happening, it will be incredibly impressive considering who they would have to beat to make it happen. Something worth having an eye on, because even at 4-5, I can think of one, maybe two situations with more volatility and a hotter seat than Chicago, but it's not a long list, and that's a weird thing to say about a team that's only one game below 500. All right, that does it for the recap show. Jam-packed show, and we've got plenty more coming your way. As always, we will be talking to Jay Glazer on Monday, all the latest news, insights for your Tuesday moving into week 11. We'll have a Monday Night Football recap, really good-looking game between the Dolphins and the Rams that we will get into. We're also going to make the case for or against some bubble teams, some potential wild cards. Do we believe? Do we not believe? We'll get into the nitty-gritty of it. Really looking forward to that. We'll be back in your feed on Tuesday. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your pods, wherever you get your pods, you can find us there. Go give us a follow on the socials at NFL on Fox Pod. We appreciate it so much. Love doing this show. Hope you all enjoy listening to it. I will talk to you Tuesday.